If I could have everybody's attention, welcome to the February 19th Town Milton Planning Board meeting. Pardon for the couple-minute delay, we were trying to get organized, but I will ask Ms. Padula to lead us with the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'm sorry.
Okay, just some chairman announcements. Please note that John Whittle informed us earlier this month that he had some out-of-town family business to attend to, so he's not with us this evening. And our alternate member, Nancy Padula, will be sitting in with the board this evening. This is our first use of the alternate position under the town's newly enacted alternate member legislation. Welcome, Nancy. So glad to have you here. She's been almost a year, a little over a year. And this is the first opportunity for her to sit with the full board. A couple announcements. On January 15th, Bill Lewis, Joel Bianchi, and myself met together with Highway Superintendent Dave Forbes and Deputy Highway Superintendent Jason Miller and Lansing Engineering and the New York Development Group regarding the Rowland Street subdivision. We discussed elements of the proposed subdivision, including highway standards, subdivision waivers, and infrastructure serving it. We'll cover all this later as we continue our review of the project, if they're here. And then on January 27th, Bill Lewis and I met with John Munter regarding the proposed minor subdivision, pardon me, special use permit and site plan for the Boyhaven property, where they're proposing to reestablish a summer camp there. We discussed the need for possible variances for the project, which again we'll bring up when we continue the review on that. Also regarding the Boyhaven property, I corresponded via email with Ms. Glenna Ort of New York State DEC Region 5 regarding potential development of the property. I believe she's looking for information that can help in their appraisals for the portion of the property that DEC is looking to purchase. I'm hoping that she, Bill Lewis, and I can meet on this at some point in the future, waiting to hear back from her. On February 5th, Saratoga County Planning held their 16th annual Planning and Zoning Conference, and our entire board was in attendance. Well done, and it was a great conference with a lot of good training, and I believe we now have all met our in-service continuing education requirements for 2020. Tina has asked everybody if they want to give a copy or the original to your training sheet that you submitted, and she'll keep track of those for us. So if you don't have them tonight, give them to her when you can. And then finally, on February 5th, close of business was the deadline for the agenda submission for tonight's meeting, and we did not receive the requested materials for the Belmonte special use permit for home occupation 2 at 804 Middle Line Road. Thus, we canceled the public hearing that was scheduled last month for this evening. I've communicated with the Belmontes that we have put their entire application on hold until such time that we receive a complete application from them. On February 13th, Terry Belmonte emailed me regarding necessary information for completing their site plan and their special use permit. I sent her clarification on the standards and submittal requirements and told her that she had to have them in by the close of business March 4th, which she wanted to do on the March 18th agenda. So that's where she stands right now. I think the whole project's just on hold till we see them submit a complete application. And that's all I have. Any questions on that? Okay, next item, approval of our January 9th board meeting minutes. I'm happy to entertain a motion.
I will make that motion.
I second that motion, Chairman.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion, changes, comments on the meeting minutes? Poll board.
Mr. Marzicano?
Yes.
Mr. Bianchi?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Miss... Hold on. Every second.
Yeah.
We're trying to get it right this time. Miss Vandensap? How do you pronounce it?
Vendinsa.
Vandensap.
Further up.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Miss Stevens?
Yes.
Miss Padula?
Yes.
Chairman Bartow?
Yes. Okay, next up, we were gonna have the Rollins Street major subdivision. I don't see anybody here to represent them. So, unfortunately, I think we don't have any discussion for that. Did we have any communication from them today at all? Or did it just no show? Okay, next we'll do public comment. I skipped over that. So we don't have any public hearings this evening, so if anybody has any comments they'd like to address to the board, now would be the time. No public comment. No Rowland Street major subdivision. That's fine, so we'll communicate with them. Is anybody here from Saratoga County on the Gateway House subdivision? I did want to have some conversation with the board on this. We got a late submission map. Was there a letter that the county sent along with this or not? They were going to send a letter from the FAA. Did you get that this afternoon? Okay. But you should have a map of the airport and the runway protection zones and everything that are there. What's before us is a minor subdivision application that normally Saratoga County would not be subject to our zoning, would be removed from our zoning. But for the fact that this is to subdivide off a piece of land that has a business function on it, the Gateway House is for lack of a better term, some form of a medical business, hospice or care thing. And the fact that that will be a non-governmental purpose under the test for the governmental immunity from zoning, that would be subject to our zoning and subdivision regulations. So we can look at those 9 standards. I sent you all the document from the Department of State that has those standards in it, but having reviewed this, myself, Bill Lewis, have said, you know, this is a use that would be non-governmental. It's going to be submitted to us, so it would come to us for that review. And then we've got before us right now an actual subdivision application for a minor subdivision from the county. They did their seeker and state environmental assessment form, parts 2 and 3. They did the ag data statement. They've got an abstract of the parcel to be conveyed. They've got the subdivision map, which is not quite adequate for what we need. They got the county referral, which is kind of weird because we had to refer it to them, but they responded ahead of that. We have the email from the Saratoga County DPW Deputy Commissioner Tom Spezial. And then we have correspondence from Joel Bianchi, who further clarifies that this would be subject to our review, and these are the standards. Joel has raised a bunch of questions, and we can take a look at that. That I think are very worthwhile us being cognizant of. And the net outcome of this is we are conceivably going to be left with a lot in the airport zoning district that is 1.79 acres, not 2 acres minimum that's required. It has a use, this medical office, for lack of any other term that we have, that's not a permitted use in the airport zoning area. However, the use has been there. It was a nonprofit Red Cross building bar many years, right? Mm-hmm. Going back as long as I would know. So the question is, we need more information about is the use somehow even potentially grandfathered. But then they have non-compliant area in both areas. Road frontage pursuant to the ag or airport zoning district. So we're going to have to get more information from the county doing this. I think Joel's given a pretty good thorough analysis. We were going to plan to give this to the county this evening. I know Jennifer Lippman's here. I don't know if you want to bring up anything more.
No, I was referring to Joel's comments. As far as the additional information on these maps. And then the chairman stated that some more indication of use is required.
If I miss something, what's the objective of the subdivision, really? What's the objective?
So all we have is the email from Mr. Spezialy that explains that he was going to send a letter from the FAA. Basically what had happened is over some years back, Saratoga County acquired that lot, which was a pretty sizable lot, as part of the need to establish the runway protection zone as they were doing their airport expansion. They ended up acquiring the whole thing right out to Rollins Street. The Red Cross was there. They were going to originally demolish that building, but some various things happened, I think, including, well, Bill, why don't you give a little overview? You kind of-
My understanding through the last zoning official was that the building had a stay of execution from the town and/or the county, allowing it to operate as the Gateway House of Peace. And ever since then, but the actual outcome of the RPC was supposed to be to remove the building. With the non-for-profit that moved in, had the stay of removal, and it's been an operating non-for-profit with a lease from the county of $1 a year ever since the airport runway protection was implemented.
So the county's explaining to us that they have to separate this parcel from the other remaining portion of it that's within the RPZ. So they've come to us with this proposal to do it. The most amount of acreage that we do come up with is 1.79 acres, because any additional acreage we put it back into the RPZ. Which the FAA is saying, you can't do that, you've got to get that parcel somehow separated. It's interesting in that the county is subdividing it and transferring it to itself. So it will now be two county parcels, one being the airport, another being this one. And they're indicated to us today that they'll continue to rent it to the Gateway House.
So again, I just don't see the objective.
They need to get it. They need to isolate it and get it out of the RPC for the FAA. They're doing the subdivision to get the actual structure. The structure is the key. They're trying to get it out of the runway protection. They were given money to have it moved or whatever, and it had to stay. And it's got the FAA supposedly from Tom Spezialy. John and I had a conversation with them today. They don't have an issue with the operation of it, but they have an issue that it's part of the runway protection area right now, and they want to remove it out of there. So it's basically a formality for the FAA and the county, but what it's doing is creating a non-conforming use, non-conforming structure, and it also has variance issues. It doesn't have enough road frontage, so it's creating a zoning issue for us. It's still going to be under the control of the county for a lease to a non-for-profit business. If it was a government entity, if it was a county going to another county building, we probably wouldn't be having a discussion. But because it's a county building going to a non-for-profit or a business entity, there's where our zoning comes into play, and it's in violation of our zoning in multiple ways, the way that it's submitted.
So Tina did get something here in the mail. I'm going to have her make copies and get it to you. It's basically saying that this lot with that structure on it is not consistent with the county's ownership of airport lands. And some of these are actually persons using FAA money. So they're basically saying you got to get that structure out of the airport property or down. And I think their solution is let's get it out of the airport. But Tina, why don't we make copies of this and email it to them? Well, there's nothing we can do much more on this tonight. I got a couple things I want to clarify with Bill Kennedy and his back. But I mean, I think we're going to do some correspondence to the county saying, can you give us some more background? Just the thing you're asking, Pat. What is it you're really trying to do here? How are you?
I get the flavor of Nelly
You know, how are they going
by
to?
separating it.
How are they going to help us get to a point that we can approve something that, at least right on the face of it, is non-compliant? That's a couple things I want to make sure we've got clearance with our
So,
council.
and if it is on our zoning, is there a sunset on the term for it?
Those could all potentially be conditions. I mean, they I think we need to hear from the county, what do they want? I mean, I don't think anybody has an intention of trying to kick the gateway house out of it.
Right.
I think it's just how do we do it and be compliant with what we have? And they did not give us enough information. So I'll communicate to them that we didn't have a complete application, we didn't have anybody here to represent us. This is additional information that we'll need to go forward. And hopefully they're here next month and give us a complete subdivision. That's all we can do.
The FAA is saying they need to do this.
The FAA is telling them specifically that they have to deal with this parcel. They cannot, the FAA is saying it cannot be considered part of the airport park. I think the federal government would say, well, we've got to make what's ever on that property compliant, which would mean we need to build it.
What triggered it? It's always
They did this inspection in June of last year.
Okay.
So the FAA came out and did a compliance inspection and identified this building as.
It's been there forever, so.
Yeah, and I don't know when they did the runway expansions, you know, when, like on this other end of the runway, they bought up a bunch of properties, took down a bunch of houses. I think that happened in the late 2009? No, it was later, it was after I left in 2004. I mean, we had a lot of discussions about the runway protection zone when we did this conference in the late 80s and 90s. But they expanded those runways and that pushed everything further out. I have not seen it. I have not. This letter says compliance as soon as possible. I think they're trying to do it. They talked about once, Bill, didn't they talk about a boundary line adjustment, but that's not going to.
Yeah, they wanted to do a lot line adjustment a while back, but it doesn't fit for what they're trying to do. It's their own parcel. So that didn't work with the real property. They came up with it's a minor subdivision, and they applied for the minor subdivision again. That's what we are right now. Lack of information. We need more information for you guys to make an assessment.
Okay. And I don't see Mr. Munter here either.
He was in today and he said he would be here, so I'm surprised that he's not.
Oh, I don't know what we can do. Nope, only from Rollins Street. Mr. Munter. First time I've had that. Okay.
You want me to go check the parking lot just to make sure he's not?
You want to take a quick check? I'll wait a couple of minutes or two.
Yeah.
I find it odd, he said he would be here.
Yeah, he was in this morning. He was in this morning with some additional prints and stuff, but
Yes, are you coming to the planning board meeting? Well, we're ready for you. You are, but nobody else was here, so you were first. Thank you. Bye.
What did he say?
He said he'll be here momentarily, and I won't tell you the last couple of words.
Did he forget?
Were they
Did he
key
forget?
wins?
No, he thought he was last, so he was just waiting. And I said, well, nobody else showed, so you're first.
No, he's not first, he's.
I know.
Oh, no,
He said he will be here momentarily.
While we're waiting on you,
Yeah.
you want to make copies of this now? Hand them to the board
Yeah, if you want to do that.
as well, right?
Oh,
Or
yeah.
you keep that?
He's on his way, I called him.
He's on his way. Sounds like him call.
Supposed to be at this meeting.
Should he go from, did they cancel earlier?
Nope, we had every expectation that New York development was gonna be
And
here.
they didn't call her?
They didn't submit anything new and they haven't called.
And they had Joel's memo, Joel tried to reach them all last week. We heard that they were gonna still be here.
Ina sent them multiple emails, they're aware of the meeting, and I don't know if they didn't come up with what they were supposed to.
Most of the time.
And I suppose that's a lesson, and maybe we just need to make a call that if they don't have their submission on US, which means before the event. Not like they didn't know what we want.
Yeah, it's pretty much, it was pretty clear in that conversation. The county representative of the county said that they were. Yeah, that's what DBW.
Did you get a later call from them or not?
No, just a conversation we had with the other gentleman said he's going to come to that.
At one point, the conversation was that the town, I think what happened when the Red Cross moved out, they got some property in Greenwich or Greenfield, whoever. So they were able to move out. At that point, I think the town expressed some interest potentially in acquiring it or using it for town purposes or something like that. And then, really within a matter of months, the Gateway House came and said, oh, it's been used as a medical office, and we'd like to keep doing it. So they kind of took on this lease with the county and started operating. And they made a lot of investment, I think, in fixing it up and getting it operational and keeping it going. And that was, I don't know, when did that happen?
I don't know. All I know is from talking to the past zoning officer that he had no involvement in it. Really, when we turned over the Gateway House piece, we don't do fire inspections there, we don't have any governance over it. It was all done by the county, so really don't have much, I don't have much input on it. When it was what.
It's a different side.
So that's what we're gonna ask the county to give us a lot more history of what's going on here.
No, wasn't there something, Frank Thompson had something?
Correct.
Back then.
The supervisor wanted it for office space, is my understanding. And with the Gateway House piece does not have an operational CO for the business that's running there from the town. So it's governed by the county entity. We don't do fire inspections there. They don't have any, per se, it's on county property. And usually if it's a county-owned building, they defer all their inspections and building permits to the state. But being, like John said, in the zoning laws, municipal zoning laws, with them having a private entity on it, the age is whole separate, it allows us, our zoning comes into play. John and I had this conversation tonight, and I brought it up.
I think that was when Frank was gonna lease it for $1 a year or something.
And that's what they're doing with the town.
It's starting to do that.
Because,
Well, the problem is that we can't have offices in the airport zone.
right, that's it. But it's
Or
never-
healthcare, or any of that.
Right, but at one point it was something about, I remember them saying they were going to tear it down because of the fact it was in the area and something about the cone or whatever that went over it, so it couldn't be office buildings. But Gateway didn't fill that, since they weren't an office building, they were medical or whatever. It wasn't an office.
No, the only thing I know is our zoning officer was reluctant to issue a C of O for anybody that occupy any business or occupy the house. But again, the county has higher jurisdiction, or higher authorities,
And they do their own code enforcement.
they do their own enforcement through the state, they defer to the state, so
Yeah.
that's where it stands. And as far as the town's concerned, it's a zoning issue. That's where we are.
Big memories of it.
So how was the association in towns?
Excellent. It's the usual.
Did they end up having some decent planning and zoning stuff?
I went to one of those.
You did go to the secret one? It was a good one? Who did it? Any other good sessions?
That was excellent. I think some of the ones that they have the lawyers in, and the lawyers are asking questions, are a whole lot more informed than the other ones. Sometimes seem to just skim the surface.
Yeah.
They're getting through so much material in such a short time. It's an hour-long class, and they're covering so much. With the lawyer ones continue on a lot of times. They don't seem to try to cover as much. They do basics, and then they do the lawyer's questions.
Yeah,
So those are the ones I think that, for me personally, I learned the most in.
yeah.
The others are, you know, it never hurts to repeat something or relearn it, obviously. And some of them are kind of like that, some of the basics, relearn them with a few extra things thrown in.
Okay.
But that's what the lawyers do, ones that really stand out.
Yeah, an immunity one, zoning immunity.
Zoning immunity, that was good. Yeah, that's a good one.
Floodplain, actually, that's very interesting.
Okay.
I know. Well, this is
Yeah.
just not today.
Yeah.
Later this afternoon.
No, after that, I have conversation.
Wow.
Yeah, the zoning.
I don't know if we need this, but.
A lot of good information in that.
Yeah.
I have packets, I have quite a few of them that I haven't even packets on too.
Can you see?
The ones that didn't give you,
I wonder if.
that didn't give the handout, is I could ask for it. So I email, up to my business director, a couple, got them like right away.
Yes.
The speaker one, John, was Daniel
Russo.
Lance Weintraub, and Daniel Whitehead.
Yeah.
Just
Dan
short
Russo
environmental-
was one of the authors of the original secret legislation.
Yeah. Short environmental assessment form. Had Patricia Burke did that.
Okay.
Christopher Reeves. Billy Burke.
Did everybody on the board get an updated list with the meetings for 2020? You did get one? So I know I passed them out like. So we got the 2020 meetings and cutoff dates on that list. And then we also have the updated list of, I'm pretty sure I gave you the list of everybody's names and their.
Contact date.
Their contact, yeah.
Can you just email me those?
Oh, here's mine, do you want the copy?
Is that the new
I
meeting?
have
That's the new one,
Here.
planning and zoning board dates, yeah, that's the one she sent us. It was way back, ways back.
Yeah, I think it
Along
was
with this.
last.
Yeah.
So I have another one here, or you just want me to email it to you, John? So you have it.
Whichever works for you.
This is for 2020 meetings.
Run out to your short meeting.
Yes, because remember you had the update for 2020 to 2021. And you remember those?
That's my I know, it confuses people. My G tends to, like, it is, so, yeah, it'll just, this is size difference. I know everybody's.
Most people just avoid saying.
My boss for years, he
Right.
just says Bernadette. I don't know, I've known him for many years at this point.
Yeah, that's right, no job.
It's Dutch, I mean, yeah, I think people want us to pronounce it like German, Dutch, Dutch, so we'll just have to-
Hey, there he is. You're the man of the hour. Number one, I apologize. I did see, I think Chairman Bartow told me earlier this was going to be
Third on the agenda.
a very long meeting. And I went in this morning and looked at the agenda and saw that I was last. So I made a bad decision. But I'm here. And
So we got a few things to go over first, and then we'll turn it over to you.
okay,
No, you can sit there if you like. Okay, Mr. Munter's here. Next on our agenda for the Boyhaven minor subdivision and special use permit. Mr. Munter's proposing a subdivision of 69 acres of the Boyhaven parcel involving the 2 pounds and the premises that has most of the buildings on it for the operation of a youth summer camp. In addition to requiring a minor subdivision approval, it also is a use in the R2 zoning district that requires a special use permit and site plan approval. And there were some definition conflicts within our zoning code that particularly surrounding camps, dwelling units, and families that have caused the proposed use of the new structures to need a use variance from the zoning board of appeals. So we have decided to do a coordinated review with the subdivision, special use permit, site plan, and use variance. I've communicated with Meg Soden, she doesn't have any problems with that. You're going to be on their board meeting later this month and commence that processing. So with you, you should all have the minor subdivision application, special use permit application, the short environmental assessment form. There's actually 2, because you did both applications, you only need 1. He's got the warranty deed and covenant. He's got the subdivision map dated December 20th, the site plan map dated January 30th. Seeker forms, parts 2 and 3 on the impact assessment and determination of significance. The email from Meg Soden regarding lead agency that we did, and a letter from Joel Bianchi dated February 12, 2020. At this point, I'd like to entertain a motion to declare the Milton Planning Board as lead agent pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act.
Chairman, I'll make that motion.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Call the roll.
Mr. Marsicano?
Yes.
Mr. Bianchi?
yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Ms. Vandista?
Yeah.
I'll get that right, sir. I'll get it right, sir. Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
Ms. Padula?
Yes.
Chairman Barton?
Yes. Next, I'll entertain a motion to declare the Munter Boyhaven minor subdivision special use permit, site plan review, and use variance as an unlisted action pursuant to secret.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Chairman, I'll second that.
Any discussion? There being no discussion, pull the board.
Mr. Marsicano?
Yes.
Mr. Bianchi?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Ms. Vandista?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
Ms. Padula?
Yes.
Chairman Barton?
Yes. Okay, Mr. Munter, present us where you're at.
Okay. I think you all have a similar map in your details, this is a little bigger. And just to give you a little update, I think most of you probably know that probably a year and a half ago, I purchased the Boyhaven property because at that time, the town had looked at working possibly with the state to take this land over. And I think a time came when the Boy Scouts just ran out of time to make a decision. And they said that they would no longer address these issues. And I think they were getting ready to sell this to a developer who wanted to develop this 300 acres into homes. At that time, I just felt that it was not a good use for this property, and I went ahead and purchased it to try to avoid this situation. So that's why I'm here today, I guess a year and 4 months later, trying to accomplish preserving this property. I'm here tonight trying to get a subdivision of a portion of this 300 acres, a little less than 300 acres, because I have a children's camp that would utilize the majority of the buildings on this complex, and would hope to be in business this June 1st. And the reason I'm here a little late is that I had to go through the survey process to get the subdivision survey done before I could present it to you. Basically, we're taking, we have this parcel that's a little under 300 acres. We're taking 60-some acres. It includes both sides of the road because both lakes are certainly important to the children's camp. The lower lake would be used as a swimming facility as it was with the Boy Scouts. The upper lake would be used for kayaking and canoeing. And we went through the parcel. You can see it's not divided as a rectangle, but it's divided in a way that would give them the maximum use for a children's camp. This children's camp will have their not-for-profit organization that will have kids, both boys and girls, of various ages. They've been in business for about 4 to 5 years on leased property southwest of here within New York State. And they'd like to own their own property. The intent of this organization is as a not-for-profit. They will have probably 70% of their kids as paid people coming in, but they will probably have 25 to 30% tuition-free kids brought in from various parts of the state to participate in their programs as they've done for the last 4 or 5 years. So I had a number of options with children's camps, and this particular not-for-profit was the most desirable to my mission statement in really doing a good job to preserve this for a very good use. I think you'll also find this, if this is approved, I think this organization is going to come forth to the town to see how the town can also use this. They run a camp from June 1st through September, but they're also very open to letting the community get involved in using this area. So this is where I created my interest in really running with this particular focus on this particular group. The other thing that's good, I do have, you might ask, what am I going to do with the rest of the property? I'm trying to finalize that. I have 3 or 4 groups that are also conservation-oriented groups. But I'm really getting to the point where I'm going to try to solidify that within probably the next couple of months. Of those 3 groups, one that started out very interested, I haven't had the major feedback from them. So I have a feeling that my decision in the next couple of months is going to be between 2 groups rather than 3, unless this other group comes up and indicates the interest that they had back a year ago. So again, this land that we're looking at encompasses not all the buildings on the property, but it encompasses probably, certainly 70% of the major buildings, many of the lean-to areas, but not all the lean-to areas that are down in this area. As you know, when you look at a campground, the Department of Health is really the focal agency to make sure that this camp is going to work for the intent that you are looking forward to achieving. I've been in touch with the Department of Health to the point where we're also on a schedule with them to make this happen. In essence, their main concerns up front are how we're going to treat the potable water and the sewage for this camp, and also what we'll do with making sure all these existing buildings are up to code. Again, I've been in touch with Bill, bringing him up to speed on what we're trying to accomplish and what we'll do to make sure that the sewage, the potable water, and the electrical codes are met within this thing. So, that's about all I guess I can tell you right now until I hear concerns and questions that people on the board may have.
Is your plan to sell this lot then?
What's that?
Is your plan to sell this lot?
Yes.
Okay.
My plan is to sell it to this not-for-profit.
Okay.
And that's another thing that's in process as we speak.
I'm still not sure why the lines are placed where they are. Like, for example, on the north end, why wouldn't you just go to the property line? Just for example.
It's a good question, very good question. One of the groups is interested in having continuity for this property to their adjacent property across the street.
Like an access road then?
Well, access trail property and everything.
Okay.
So, it's been one of the reasons why this has been left open to connect to adjacent property.
Thank you.
Bill, do you have any?
Just that it's in the R2 rural district, and it is a permitted use for a camp in the R2 rural district. He's asking for a minor subdivision, a seasonal camp situation, which the property has been operating as a seasonal camp for, I guess, around 100 years, however, since Boyhaven's been in place. So it is a permitted use in the R2, and again, it's before you.
Mr. Martin, the larger parcel of property, do you anticipate, you make mention of more than one agency having interest? Do you have any anticipation of that being put forth for a more further subdivision?
I just see that put forth as an entire parcel. The three people I'm speaking with are all looking at that as an entire parcel. And right now, they're all people that would be in this preservation mode to keep that original parcel, what we would generally call undeveloped.
Milton, do you have any comments?
Yes. Obviously, the questions of the water and sanitary sewer need to be addressed before we review. And then additionally, just to clarify the disturbance that you intend to partake in, because obviously that will dictate whether or not a swimming pool.
I'm having trouble hearing.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Just clarification on the disturbance that is intended to commence on the site. If you exceed 1 acre of disturbance, soil disturbance is SWIP will be required. And so that's a different additional information that we need to do our review. Also, in your seeker short form responses, it should be noted that there are bats in the area that may impact your ability to put down new trees. So we just want to see a little bit more of what disturbance is proposed, because that will, there are certain regulations that will impact your ability to do such activities. And I said water and sewer, I don't know if you heard me before, just to clarify the potable water and sanitary sewer services that will be servicing this parcel. It should also be noted, so that the larger parcel that you're carving this proposed division out of, making sure that depending on what your proposed future use is that's a reasonable layout of a parcel that is usable and makes sense for future use. If we just did have a little bit more information as to what that parent parcel is intended to be used for once this subdivision is granted. And then in addition to those comments, I think there's still clarification on whether or not it does meet zoning based on the definition that you've given. I think that there's some questions based on the definitions in your code and the zoning, allowed zoning uses in this area if this will be allowed or if this should be something that would be required. And I think that there's some questions there too.
I think I don't have a good memory, but I'll try to start at your first question. Certainly, when I've looked at the overall use of this property as a children's camp, it appears the Department of Health is really the critical agency in the state.
In terms of permitting.
Yeah, to really regulate this. And that's why I'm working with them on both potable water and sewage.
Right.
Just to give you a brief description of what we're doing here, all the buildings are contained in this area. This little building here is called the Novus Center. This will be used for recreational use. We're proposing a little shed addition to this Novus Center that will give us bathrooms for the children's camp. And getting back to the children's camp requirements, they like to have fairly large buildings available in case of storms, so that not only will they use this for general activities, but it will be one location that they can congregate people in case of an oncoming lightning storm. So we have proposed bathrooms for this facility, and we've also proposed a newly designed septic system to handle those. And those septic designs have been approved and forwarded to the health department for their review, because in talking to the health department, the two critical things that they're concerned with, that they need time to analyze, is sewage disposal and potable water. Moving on to potable water, I have a licensed water treatment person that we're redesigning the water system from what it was with the Boy Scouts. The Boy Scouts had two water sources. They had a spring near Frank Brook that supplied part of the water, and that water ran underground to the White Historical House that was also the Ranger headquarters, and distributed some of the water. It had a total pump system, chlorination system. The second was at the dining hall. We have a drilled well there. When I looked at the previous Department of Health records over the years, their concerns were always a little concerned about the spring, making sure chlorination and contamination was controlled there. So I went up to the dining hall. I tried to get results from the from the Boy Scouts, they told me that that well was 147 feet deep, and they didn't have exact records, but they thought it delivered 35 gallons a minute, which is very high volume for a dug well, for a drilled well. So I put a water meter on it, and I discharged the well for 2 hours at 15 gallons a minute with no change in volume. When I looked at the 15 gallons a minute, looking at, again, what the health department requires, they'd like to have a 1-day capacity ahead if in their approval cycle. So it totaled out that our demands for the day were like 2,500 gallons, okay? So what we're doing in this proposal is we're installing 2 1,500-gallon storage tanks after the chlorination process. So we will supply these 2 1,500-gallon tanks with potable water, and then they also require that you have 20 psi minimum at various locations throughout the site. So again, we did a little analysis on, it turns out immediate demands are highest in our shower house, because the new shower house is going to have 9 showers, 2 are handicapped, but our demand rate there was based on 1.5 gallon per minute showers, plus the toilets and labs in that area. So they created our highest demand situation. Then we also looked at our line loss throughout the rest of the camp getting to the lean-tos, where you need both a wash sink and potable water at 20 pounds pressure. And I came to the calculation that I over-exaggerated, but I said we have a maximum of 1,000 feet of water line at 2-inch diameter serving these areas. So we've gone through all the calculations. Again, at the shower house, the Department of Health requires water temperature at 110 degrees. So I've gone through the calculation of 9 showers operating continuously and being able to deliver 110 degree temperature. And this is all information that has been submitted to the Department of Health.
Are you intending to drill new wells, or are you utilizing the existing wells on the site?
Say that again?
Are you intending to drill new wells?
Have no reason to drill new wells.
You're just using the existing wells on the site?
The well at the dining hall will be the prime source. The chlorination and storage will take place right at the dining hall, and delivery throughout the system will take place at the dining hall. And the Department of Health was, in their initial comments back and forth, are very happy with our analysis and are anxious to totally analyze it.
The Department of Health will be more restrictive, obviously, because it's a children's camp. very
Absolutely.
high restrictions.
And you know, they have requirements of flushing the system, what the, not only the rate of flow, but what the chlorination rate has to be. Once we prove that, that's done monthly, and it has to be recorded. So I think we're, on that end, we're tend to be under control of what we're trying to accomplish.
So I just would recommend that your proposed plans for your potable water and your sanitary sewer are provided.
Say
Just
that,
provide your plans for your potable water systems and your sanitary sewer systems to the board so that they can be reviewed.
that's fine.
Any other quick question, any other questions from board members right now? So,
Mr. Martin?
Yeah.
One quick question, I think I understand. You are anticipating doing this, I'm gonna use infrastructure for a little bit, utility work prior to the sale to the camp?
What I'm doing, I'm giving the camp and I are in an agreement process,
Okay?
and I understand their need for being open June 1st. So I've just offered to make sure this stuff is in process, and
So the responsibility of completing these process will be
Right.
on you?
on me, true,
Completion of them?
absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
so we got a detailed memo from Joel Bianchi that we can give you a copy of, outlining what we'll need in terms of the environmental assessment form. There were a couple of questions that he had that still needed to be addressed. Jenny mentioned what's the area of disturbance going to be, is if it's more than an acre, do we need a stormwater plan? I don't think it is.
There is,
based on what we've seen.
I can answer
You just
that.
need to answer that
Yeah.
in the application. And then there was two responses that came up on the environmental map or used with the environmental assessment form that Joel ran. One being an archaeological sensitive area somewhere on the property that we'll have to have the State Historic Preservation Office give us an indication of what that is. And if there's, I don't think it's going to be anything big, but we don't know what it is yet. And the other one being the northern long-eared bat in the area. And that just might, I don't see you taking any trees down.
I
so-
can answer the bat situation. I think I can answer both of them.
Okay.
MJ Engineering did a big study for the
Yes.
town on this thing originally. And when I went through their study, the only historical area that they came up with was an old foundation on Whitehaven Road, closer to 29, that does not affect this property. They also mentioned that we have buildings on the property that could potentially become national historic buildings, but they are not that right now, okay? And I can give you a little more insight on our phase 2 of this children's camp. Phase 1, we're ignoring the White House. We love the White House. Children's camp loves the White House. But there's no money to do the White House in phase 1. The minute we get through phase 1 successfully, we're already analyzing what has to be done to recover the original building, because we all want that recovered. And it would be great for the camp to have that as a principal building for not only their offices, but for some of their summer people. They're aware of the fact that they have to have nurses on staff for the summer, and they realize that in a rural area, it's not always easy to bring people out there. So the more enhanced situation they can have, the easier it's going to be to have this type of talent on site. So the 1830 house is really on site to be analyzed, and if we successfully make it through this 2020 season, we'll be back here telling you what we're going to do to recover that 1830 house.
So then he's also outlined a number of things that are going to be informational needs that are going to be required to be submitted for the special use permit. This is where the engineers.
What are they?
Oh, well, we need to have a discussion of the type and functionality of the water system and wastewater, which you're verbally giving, we need to have it in writing. And I think we're totally in deference to whatever DOH will approve, we just need to know what is going to be contemplated. Operational periods, how many hours per day, the weeks, the months, when is the camp going to be running or not. Number of campers and or employees that would be typically there at any given time. Special activities that'll be around. You talked about swimming, you talked about whatever else they were going to do use of that, I think you call it the Novus building.
Novus Center.
Yeah, so identifying that. Exterior lighting that might be on, defining where open spaces would be kept and retained. Any general site improvements such as internal roads, parking lots, anything like that that may occur. And then we'll need an indication of who's actually going to be the operator of the camp eventually. And whether they're going to be the owner or a third party. And you're indicating they're going to be an owner. Then, of course, the other regulatory jurisdictions, which really is DOH and possibly DEC, depending if the bats are an issue there.
I don't think...
Then we need a site plan for the property. I think we discussed that when we met. Where we need the requirements of our site plan to be met, so we can review that.
I thought I gave you that.
No.
That's not acceptable?
No, if you look at the standards for our site plan, what you need, I thought we gave you those, but there's quite an extensive list of things that we're gonna have to have.
This is really the site plan I gave you. So you got to tell me what's wrong with that site plan relating to this particular project.
Well, I can give you a copy of this again, you know,
Well,
but it's the
when I
location.
looked over, let me be specific back and forth. I looked at like outdoor lighting. Outdoor lighting, to me, if I do building in Saratoga, I certainly have to address outdoor lighting. I'm on a road where I'm the only landowner on 300 acres, taking out 60 acres out of the middle of it. Is lighting critical to the planning board on this? For instance, I'm just using that as an example.
It still should be listed on your site plan, so that the board can see where your lighting is proposed in conjunction with the proposed secondary lot. It's really just for them to be able to review where the lighting is currently, and if you've got any new proposed, to make sure it doesn't interfere with adjacent properties as well, not just for the work that you're doing, so that it still should be shown on your site plan.
We have a lot of, it's very difficult for us to reflect on adjacent properties here.
It's still needs to be shown, just so that they can see it and it's a record.
What are some of the other things, John, just so I can...
The location and height of all the buildings that are on the properties, the provision for vehicle, pedestrian, bicycle access in and around the property, outdoor storage, lighting design, materials, which is all going to deal mostly with what you're building. Any drains, culverts that have to be associated with that. The description of the and methods of sewer and water that you're going to be providing. delineation of any wetlands, floodplains, steep slopes, or streams that are on the property, not outside of that lot, only on the 6
No, they're,
acres.
okay,
Yeah, and then, the lighting that she mentions, the amount of area that's gonna be devoted to office use or similar other activities that are on it, you know, where's the Novus building, what are the buildings gonna be used for? Landscaping plan, if there's any additional landscaping that you're gonna be doing. And then it's the roads, trails and movements within it. That's about it.
see,
But a map that gives us a sense of, these are the buildings are here, these are what they're gonna be used for, this is what's gonna happen. I mean, you've indicated to us like the winter camping building would be eliminated, the one that's behind the White House?
no,
It's not gonna be, okay. I remember you just said you weren't sure what that use was of that building was gonna be. So we're gonna wanna have a general sense of what are the buildings that are gonna be
yeah.
retained.
I'm happy to outline those. I can just so the whole board understands. We're not gonna change the road approaches to what the Boy Scouts did. I just was fortunate today to get a donation from D.A. Collins to deliver 200 tons of item 4 to resurface these roads.
Yeah.
So they'll be compacted and restored to probably better than they were with the Boy Scouts, but we're not going to build any new roads in these.
Okay.
And our lighting, just so that you know when you look at it next month, lighting is going to remain unchanged from what it is today, but I'll indicate where the lighting is today so that you can all get a sense of what we're doing. I mean, you just have to realize this is a children's camp. It's going to be very active during the day. There's going to be some campfires at night, and probably at 9:30, this place is going to go dead for the evening and repeat itself every day from June through September.
One more question.
So we can give you a copy of this?
That's fine.
From them that has what he has and the points that he did. If you have any questions, again, we're happy to sit down and go over any of the details of these. I mean, I don't know from an emergency access, I don't know what you need in terms of, getting into the site where they're gonna be. I don't know that there's parking, like handicap parking up near the dining hall and all, and that needs to be accommodated. So we'd have to see that. I don't know what you need for emergency access to the dining hall.
There is a roadway system that gets you up to the dining hall that is adequate for fire service. Obviously, if he's retopping it and restoring it, would be something we just come out. We would check on our annual fire inspections to make sure that we have access to all facilities, which right now, currently, we do through the truck.
So we just need a map that shows that.
My main, I conversed with Bill on what we're trying to accomplish. And even on the 3 original buildings I mentioned to Bill, I brought an electrical inspector in this week and said, we're going to make these revisions, but we need an electrical inspection, a complete inspection for every one of these buildings. So I brought the electrician with me, so he wasn't going to have any surprises as to what would come up, because being in this business, and I got to tell you, I'm removed from doing any of this work. My role as an owner is the work's going to be done by an outside construction company, outside electricians, outside plumbers. My only role in this is to make sure it's done correctly, on time, and these people get paid. Okay? Those are my three obligations. As an owner, I didn't want to get involved in the construction process. Anything I might do will just be a donated event to wherever they need a fill-up here. So that's pretty much all I can tell you.
Okay. The use variance, well, yeah, I mean, the use variance is going forward. So he's made an application to the zoning board of appeals.
That's
Bill
correct.
has been talking to Meg Sullivan about what that is, and it's a kind of odd variance thing in the sense that it's these conflicting definitions.
Right.
I mean, the property had been used as a camp for 80-some years, and that's really what he's trying to get back to. It's just that we have to...
And we also look, in our focus, we've kind of looked at the Department of Health criteria for a children's camp and kind of directing this whole show to make sure we're doing things right. And if we go back to the Department of Health requirements, they're in vast variation from what the town is right now. And we just think that somewhere along the way, we know how zoning ordinances got created. You always have little glitches in them. I think this may well be one glitch where they say only 2 people can exist in one cabin and in our town agreement. And we have a 24 by 24 4 cabins proposed that would have I think 6 people at 2 levels, and they meet all the minimum square foot requirements of the camping part of the code, but it's a
We
different...
just need to see drawings, the same drawings that you do.
Yeah.
But Joel's given a pretty detailed scope of what we need to make the application complete, because that's what we need, is a complete application. To then put it in, we'll have to schedule a hearing on this. So, I mean, we realize the time crunch that you're trying to
Absolutely.
get here. So, I mean, if you think you can get all these requirements to us by March,
I can get all of them to you this week.
well, we need them by March 4th. So you got till March 4th. I'm happy, if the board's happy, to try to schedule the public hearing, and we'll make a secret determination of significance prior to commencing that hearing next month. If we don't have everything, we can keep the hearing open, that's not a problem. I just don't want to, I want to try to give you as expeditious of a review as we can here. We'll have to see what the zoning board of appeals wants to do. They're going to have to do a hearing as well, probably in their March meeting. I did ask Billy, he hasn't gotten back to me yet, is it a possibility we could combine the 2 hearings in one? And we may be able to do that, just to avoid you having to come twice. So we'll do that, but if the board's willing to say that we'll make a secret determination prior to commencing the hearing, but we'll take a motion to schedule a public hearing for this subdivision special use permit and site plan at 7:05 on March 18th.
Chairman, can I ask one more question? Not to belabor this, and I apologize, but I just don't want this to be a roadblock at some point. We talked about a seasonal use. What about off-season security, and as that pertains to fire protection and/or access for non-members?
Well, this not-for-profit group is very interested in talking to the community, because they're anxious to let the community use this for town uses. That's one of their
In the essence of a town park per se?
Yeah, and so they have a very strong interest in making these connections. And I could have had the camp director here.
I guess one of my concerns, only knowing where his property is and where history has changed, the security of your property, once you get it reinvigorated, having non-invited guests in there per se, or illegal activities.
That's a good question.
And I'm not trying to belabor that, I'm really not.
No, it's a good question because when I bought the property, that was my first concern. It was also a concern of my insurance company. From the insurance company wanted certain requirements, but mainly that's why both the lake and the lower pond are drained, because until it became functional, they didn't want those up to full level. So you're going to see those not brought up until the camp goes into use. The interesting thing I found when I purchased it, I thought that this could easily become the town of Milton landfill, being on an obsolete road.
Vandalism and
So I did put up a cable fence with posted signs, and I gotta tell you, I've had a lot, before I took over the property after the Boy Scouts left, there was vandalism. There was copper pipe cut out, breakers removed and all this stuff. But I've had, I don't like to brag about it, but I've had very good luck by the community of not doing any damage to this property since I've owned it. So we don't know if that's how that's going to work. I do have, by the way, some former Boy Scouts. One guy that's retired from the National Guard after 40 years, that's dedicated to Boyhaven, and he spends, I bet you, 2.5 days a week up there patrolling this area. He's just dedicated, he loves this place. So, and I keep getting more and more of these people, so I think we're going to be able to keep that under control. But you will hear, I think, later, probably in a July or August meeting, I think the camp director is going to want to come in, make a little presentation to how he would like to see the town gain some utilization of this property. Again, it won't be between June and September, but there's some nice months after September through the winter that they could utilize this, and he's anxious to talk to people about this.
Any other? Are we comfortable scheduling a hearing? Can I get a motion for that?
I'll make that motion to schedule the hearing.
I'll second.
Who seconded it, Pat? Any more?
Pardon?
Okay. Call the board.
And if anyone, any of you members needs to either see the site or become more familiar between now and a month from now, don't be afraid to get a hold of me. I'm being an old, retired guy. I have certain available.
Mr. Marciano?
Yes.
Mr. Yankee?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Ms. Van Oh, did it right?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
Ms. Padula?
Yes.
Chairman Barton?
Yes.
Okay, so 7:05, you'll be the first one on the agenda next month.
And I'll be here.
If you're not gonna be here, let us know.
Well, yeah, I apologize tonight, but I thought I was being smart by looking over this long agenda you had. I said, if I get there Thursday morning, I'll be okay.
Okay, is there any other business to come before the board? If not, I'll have a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
That comes, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful evening.